They say one of the easiest ways to make a new friend is to actually share a humiliating story. My humiliating story took place 31 years ago in the parking lot of Mexicali Border Cafe in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was there that one of Tulsa's finest had me in handcuffs for public intoxication, one time too many. And he said something interesting to me. He said, "Richard, you can either be the one with the handcuffs or you can be the one in the handcuffs. Which would you prefer to be?" To be honest, I was drunk, so the question didn't make any sense. 31 years later, the question still doesn't make any sense to me. But I gave him the answer that I thought he wanted to hear. I said to him, "I'd rather be the one with the handcuffs." So he said, "I got a deal for you. Instead of taking you to the county jail, I'm gonna dump you off at your sister's one more time." This is the humiliating part. I never even made it to my sister's front door. I fell asleep or passed out in the bushes. I woke up hours later, freezing cold. But the handcuffs that Tulsa's finest had put on me that night were not the first handcuffs I had. Metaphorically, I was handcuffed long before that day ever existed. My great-great-great-great-grandfather, who, by the way, I'm named after, became best known for being the first murderer in the city of Chicago. He took a dagger and he drove it, plunged it through the heart of his business rival because he wanted to preserve the secret of his sweetheart deal with nearby Fort Dearborn. My father died of alcoholism at age 42. And between my father and my great-great-great-great-grandfather, there was a whole lot of murder and a whole lot of mayhem and a whole lot of addiction. This side of the family tree was pretty rough. My mother, she's a Christian school teacher. Well, her family came here just 20 years after the Mayflower landed as Puritans to gain freedom of religion and to share the good word with whoever they could. And between my mother and her great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, there were a whole lot of really good people. After my parents divorced when I was 6, my mother decided to remarry. And she married the guy who really did walk 9 miles to school in the snow. And you guessed it, it was both ways. And it was uphill. He was a former professional boxer who had become a salesman. It was 1974, and it was supposed to be just like the Brady Bunch. The 4 siblings on his side of the family joining with the 3 siblings on my side of the family to create the perfect, harmonious, comedic family. But instead of being like a TV sitcom, it ended up being a lot more like the scary episodes of The Twilight Zone. I don't know how many of you grew up in a family that also had some scary episodes. As a therapist, I work in an area of family therapy where I create genograms. These are psychological family trees, or maps, if you will. And it's not surprising that families tend to repeat themselves over and over and over. I grew up in, of course, what many would call a dysfunctional family. There were joys, but there was also difficulty, there was confusion, there was chaos, and I was dealt a full hand of aces. Aces are what we in psychology and in the criminal justice profession refer to as adverse childhood experiences. In this game, though, the more aces you get, unlike the games in Las Vegas, the more likely you are to be a loser at the game of life. How many aces were you dealt? Criminal justice and psychology professionals note that in predicting the trajectory of a person's experiences based on aces, like family genograms, is something that can be very accurate. What's important to know about aces is that these are where our feelings come from. These are where our emotions develop. This is where the cognitive way that we think about life is formed. This is where even our bodies can be physically impacted by the experiences of life. And those feelings and those physical sensations and these emotions can carry throughout a person's life. Now, traditional approaches to counseling and psychotherapy have often looked at the past and tried to help clients come to terms with the past or explore the past or revisit the past even. These were really the ideas of Sigmund Freud, Freudian psychotherapy. In fact, his approach was so pervasive that the stereotype of the therapist saying, "So tell me about your mother," still persists today. But we now have real research into what causes the difficult emotions and sensations and experiences that haunt us and cause us difficulty. Think about your anxieties. Think about your fears. Think about your depressions. Think about your angers. Think about the thoughts which have been self-limiting and held you back from accomplishing that which is most important to you. Chances are pretty good, whatever you struggle with today are the same things you struggled with 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and 30 years ago. But we've come a long way in the field of cognitive neuroscience and psychology since the days of Sigmund Freud. And we now understand what could be referred to as the paradox of the past. And that is that although the past shapes us, although the past brings us to exactly where we are today, none of us are handcuffed to the past any longer. And that's a tremendous freedom. I'm actually in this room speaking at TEDx in Oklahoma City because my stepfather, when he was let go of his job in Chicago, found a job in Oklahoma. I was 17 at the time. I didn't even know Oklahoma existed. But I raised a family here. My son's actually sitting over here. That's actually pretty cool. And I became a part of the community. And it's been a wonderful thing, even though the experiences that brought me here were sometimes very difficult. So the paradox of the past is that the past literally brought you to exactly where you are today, but it actually doesn't determine the future. In the field of psychotherapy today, we have new ideas. And these new ideas show us that by training clients, or anyone, to stay in the present moment, they can create transformation. John Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts, he showed that people who have physical and emotional pain, he spent 30 years studying this at the University of Massachusetts, can transform that pain by learning a strategy of mindfulness and living fully in the present, no matter how many aces they were dealt. One of my favorite researchers at the University of Nevada, Stephen Hayes, he's shown in literally hundreds of studies that people who have social anxiety, based on the aces they were dealt, can have that anxiety literally evaporate when they learn the strategies of present living. Marsha Linehan, University of Washington, she works with borderline personality disordered individuals. These are the clients that mental health and criminal justice professionals often view as the most difficult to deal with. And her clients, when taught a strategy of mindfulness and living fully in the present, can become part of the communities again and can overcome many of the adversities that brought them to their point of need in the first place. How many of you are in business? Because businesses who learn to share the idea of mindfulness with their employees are businesses that have more productive workplaces, happier employees, retain clients for a longer period of time. Parents who learn to live in the moment are parents who have happier marriages and more well-adjusted kids. A recent study by Ortiz and Sablinga was really remarkable to me as a therapist. It studied children with identified adverse childhood experiences. Some of them worse than what I experienced, some of them similar to what you've experienced, some of them even worse than all of us in this room. But when they taught the strategies of mindfulness to these children, the outcome was resilience. By the way, in a little while, I'm going to actually share with you a way you can bring this into your own life. Because what was most important about this study is not only that they developed resilience, but when they were faced with future adverse experiences, they found solutions quickly. And that's important. In other words, it literally reversed the cycle. In my family genogram, there's a whole lot of dysfunction. I'm actually pretty proud. It's been since March 31st, 1988 that I've had a drink. No need to clap for that one. Whoever actually woke up earliest today has the most sobriety. And the reason why is because it is mindfulness. It is literally one day at a time. What I'm most proud of is that my adult children have never seen me take a drink. My adult children have never seen me come home drunk. My oldest son, he's 27. I was telling some stories to my youngest son, who's actually here today. He said, wow, I didn't know that. And I said, yeah, that's because you weren't born yet. I broke the cycles of my family genogram, and I did it by taking a breath. It seems like we're always looking for the complex solution to the complex problems. But it was the great Master Oogway who taught us the simplicity of the moment. I hear some laughing. Some of you have watched my favorite movie, Kung Fu Panda. That's right, the great Master Oogway is the turtle from Kung Fu Panda. And he said profoundly, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, all we have is the present. And that's why it's a gift. But there's a shark in the water. The shark in the water is that our minds are not primed to live in the present moment. Evolutionary biology has trained us to avoid cataclysmic disaster, to catch prey, and to be efficient by drawing on our previous experiences to tell us how to act in the future. It wasn't my fault I was in those handcuffs. My adverse childhood experiences had literally encoded a pathway of maladaptive behavior. And it had done it, in my case, for at least 5, 6, who knows how many generations. But there's good news. The good news is we don't need brain surgery to change our brain structures. There are a lot of TED Talks out there that show how when we teach people mindfulness, their brain changes. They put up slides on a projector, and the slide will show the amygdala, the old brain. It'll show them thinking of a stressful situation, and it's lit up like a Christmas tree. But then they teach them a strategy of mindfulness in one session, and they take another brain picture, and it's calm and blue and clear. The good news is that each and every one of us can develop a manner of living that's one day at a time. Every one of us can live fully in the present. And the promise is that no matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll be able to see how our experiences can benefit others, and we'll be able to break the metaphorical shackles that have held us throughout our life. And so I don't want to leave here today just talking about mindfulness. I want us to experience mindfulness. Because I promise, if you do, for the next 1 minute, what I ask my clients to do, your life will be transformed. Just taking a breath. Breathe in. We often pay attention to the breath because it's a focal point that we always have with us wherever we go. We've been breathing since the first day of life, and we'll breathe until the end of the life, and so just breathe. You don't have to breathe in any special way. It's not a yoga class. Just pay attention to the breath, to the chair below you, to the shoulders of the person next to you, to the air in the room around you, and bring yourself to a point of being fully present. And the practice of mindfulness is about doing this with discipline, but more importantly, literally no longer following our thoughts, our feelings, or our sensations. You see, our minds are primed. Uh-oh, I sweated a little bit. Maybe I'm anxious. Well, if I'm anxious, maybe I won't be a good speaker. Oh, if I'm not a good speaker, maybe people won't like me. If people don't like me, maybe my son will be embarrassed. This is how we follow our emotions or our thoughts. Sometimes we have a feeling. Oh, that was uncomfortable. Maybe I have appendicitis. Do I need to go to the hospital right now? You picture yourself 3 days later having not made it to the hospital in time and worried that your family's not going to be able to live without you. These are catastrophizations that we make. And so the practice of mindfulness it's not about not having feelings or not having sensations or not having emotions or thoughts. Rather, it's about, instead of choosing to follow them, that's our old pattern of behavior, bring our attention back to the present moment. I've heard people say, well, in meditation, it's about clearing the mind. Actually, you can't do that. Like a fish swims in water, people swim in their thoughts. And so close your eyes down, and you can think, and you can feel, and you can sense as much as you want to. But when you have a thought, a feeling, or a sensation, use it as a cue to bring your attention back to the present moment. I'll give you 20 seconds right now. Close your eyes and be in this moment. And open your eyes. For many of you, you had to bring your attention back to the breath multiple times. But for everyone here, that was a life-changing experience, wasn't it? I mean, that was powerful. Give me a yeehaw if that changed your life here in Oklahoma today. I know it didn't. When I teach this to clients in the first session, they all say to me, okay, I can see that was helpful. Or they say, sure, that felt relaxing. But nobody's ever said to me yet, Richard, that changed my life. But when I tell them to practice that each and every day for the next 3 weeks, to practice in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, they almost always come back to me 4, 5, 6, 10, 12 weeks later. And they come in one day and they say, wow, Richard, now I get it. We've changed their brain chemistry. They're living intuitively in the moment rather than in the past. That's something you can take home with you. You can do this every day for the next 21 days, and I promise you will have transformed. Over the last 30 years, I've been a lot of different things. Been a puppet, a pirate, a poet, a pawn, and a king. I've had my ups, my downs. But in every situation, even those that were of my own doing, instead of being hard on myself, when I simply took a breath, everything was just better. It was the gift that Master Oogway promised me. 5 years ago, I woke up one day, I couldn't speak. I had lost my voice. It was gone. I went to the doctor. He scoped me down. He said, yep, you got a big giant tumor in your throat. That wasn't the scary part. The scary part was I'm a talk therapist. My voice is the tool of my trade. But I have 3 wonderful kids. And I began to fear that I would lose my life. What would I do? And I began to have depression, anxiety. The shackles of my past experiences had returned, and I made poor choices. I hurt other people. I hurt myself. At that time of despair, I didn't know what to do, and so I thought to myself, what would you ask your clients to do? And with those handcuffs tight, I just took a breath. And that's something you can do when you get home today. Something you can do over the next 3 weeks, 3 years, no matter what situation you're facing. Because as long as we're breathing, we're actually okay. Thank you for being in this moment with me.